What is going on, everybody, and welcome to a new series called Madden's Risers and Fallers, Week 1 edition of the NFL season. Week 1 in the NFL is always really exciting, and it did disappoint this time around. There were a lot of close games, a lot of surprising upsets or wins by a few teams, some really solid performances, some bad performances. In this video, we're going to talk about which players should have their ratings decreased in Madden and which players should have their Madden ratings increased. And this is all dependent on their performances. We all know that Madden constantly puts out patch updates for the rosters that have players go up and down throughout the course of the season. So each week I'm going to come by, bring you a video and let you know which players should have their ratings moved up and which players should have their ratings moved down. And there were quite a few this week. So first up, let's talk about it. And we are going to talk about the man, the myth, the legend, Chandler Jones. Look, Chandler Jones is one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, and it's time that we need to show him some love. Chandler Jones currently in Madden is ranked at a 94 overall, and there's quite a few players that are ranked ahead of him that we're actually going to list in the Fallers portion of this video that should not be above Chandler Jones. Chandler Jones is one of the best sack artists in the game currently. In the last 5 years, he's had some of the highest totals cumulative for sacks, and Chandler Jones is currently a 94 overall. He had 5 sacks in one game against the Tennessee Titans, and I think that's enough said. Chandler Jones definitely deserves to have that 94 overall rating. I think it should go up a few more, maybe to 96, 97, because he's been one of the most consistent pass rushers in the game for quite some time now. All right, guys, so you know if I had to put Chandler Jones at the number 1 spot for the number 1 riser in the NFL Week 1 position for Madden ratings, and you probably know who I'm going to put for number 1 in the Fallers, and that's got to be Taylor Lewin, the tackle that he went up against. Taylor Lewin gave up 5 sacks. Now, he is coming off of an ACL injury from last year, so he's probably a little rusty, and I really hate that he had to go up against one of the premier pass rushers in all of the NFL, but he got exposed. He even tweeted saying that he got his butt kicked today and that he actually thanked Chandler Jones for exposing him because now he knows what he has to work on. Taylor Lewin is currently an 85 overall in Madden, and you probably know that he's going to probably drop down a little bit for that shellacking that Chandler Jones gave him. All right, coming in the number 2 spot for the best risers in Week 1, I think it's got to be Jalen Hurts, man. Jalen Hurts really surprised me, and I know he surprised a lot of people. The Eagles just went out and blew out the Atlanta Falcons. Jalen Hurts is currently a 71 overall in Madden, and after that performance, that is downright disrespectful. Jalen Hurts had a 77% completion percentage. He threw 3 touchdowns, and he had 62 yards rushing on the ground. He was dynamic. He was explosive. He kept Atlanta on their toes, and really, it was a blowout from the word go. I am a big Jalen Hurts fan. I'm glad that he's doing well, and I'm sure the Eagles fans right now are extremely happy, and they have every right to be. All right, coming in my number 2 spot, this is probably not that big of a surprise either, and this has got to be the bad man, Aaron Rodgers. He got crushed by the New Orleans Saints, and the Saints defense is not no laughing matter. I mean, you got Cam Jordan, Marshawn Lattimore. There's some really good pieces, and that defense really helped, you know, Drew Brees get into the playoffs last year. But for Aaron Rodgers to come out and only get 133 yards of passing, he threw 2 picks. He only threw 5 picks all of last season, and he's almost halfway there in one game against the Saints. Now, we all thought that maybe Aaron Rodgers would come out in a blaze of glory, especially going up against Jameis Winston and the New Orleans Saints. Maybe it would take Jameis Winston and the Saints a little time to get together and kind of mesh, but Jameis Winston came firing out on all cylinders. I think he threw 5 touchdowns for under 100 or under 200 yards, I do believe. And Aaron Rodgers at 96 overall in Madden, and you have to think that that's probably going to drop down a little bit because we don't know, is his head in the game? My dog is like over here just chewing on some type of treat. Like, she's got to do that right here. I mean, come on. All right, so speaking of that New Orleans and Green Bay game, number 3 on the risers list for Week 1 in Madden has got to be Jameis Winston. The guy was very efficient. I mean, he threw less than 200 yards total and had 5 touchdowns. The Saints absolutely demolished the Green Bay Packers, and that Green Bay Packer defense is no joke. I mean, you got Jair Alexander, one of the best corners in the entire NFL. It's got a great line. It didn't seem to bother Jameis Winston at all. And the biggest thing is that Jameis Winston didn't even have any turnovers, which we know in previous history, especially with the Buccaneers, Jameis Winston is prone to turn over the ball, whether it's fumbles, throwing picks. I think the last time he was a starter, he had 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions. So It's actually very surprising for him to throw 5 touchdowns and not have at least 1 turnover. Jameis Winston is currently a 73 overall in Madden. And I think after that performance, he deserves to get boosted up a little bit in Madden. All right, number 3 on the followers list is going to be Ezekiel Elliott. So we're going to go back to that opening day game, and Ezekiel Elliott is an 88 overall in Madden. So for a running back that is almost a 90 overall, for him to have less than 40 yards total in a game, especially opening game. Now, I know that the Buccaneers defense was one of the best in the NFL. I think they were the best in the NFL against the run, but to have someone like that, almost a 90 overall running back, if you think about it just in Madden terms, if you have a 90 overall player and you don't even get them involved, even if you don't even care to get them involved, they have less than 40 yards total, they have no touchdowns. Well, what's the point of even having them? I think the Cowboys has actually shown that they kind of prefer Tony Pollard over Ezekiel Elliott in a lot of situations, especially if they're behind in the game. Ezekiel's not really even going to get a lot of touches. So to have Ezekiel Elliott an 88 overall, especially in that performance, it seems like the Cowboys are kind of not even utilizing him in crunch times anymore. I think they need to lower his Madden rating. I don't think that we need to go too crazy with it, but it's definitely something to look forward to or look at in the near future. All right, number 4 on the list for this week's Risers. And yes, I am a homer, but I think I have some validation in this, and this is going to be Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is a 71 overall in Madden. Him and Jalen Hurts are the worst starters in Madden. Sam Darnold ended up with a 68 completion percentage on the day. He threw for 1 touchdown, and yes, he ran for a touchdown as well against his former team. And yes, we know it is the Jets. What else can you really say? I'm not going to try to get too hyped up on it, but to have a starter at 71 overall, and I know that it's for a good reason, but I think after that, you probably can feel a little bit more comfortable with moving Sam Darnold's starter up. And I'm not saying going anything crazy, but maybe a 73, 74. Let his accuracy increase a little bit, because I play with him a lot and he's not accurate at all in the game. All right, number 4 on week 1's fallers for Madden, and I think this has got to be Khalil Mack. I think Khalil Mack's time as one of the top rushers is kind of over. I might be kind of overreacting a little bit in this, but if we look at Khalil Mack's last few seasons, I think he had like 8.5 sacks and 9 sacks. And then this past week, or this week against the Rams, he could come out, show out, try to startle Matthew Stafford at, his opening day game with the Rams, and he ends up having a half of a tackle. Actually, it was an assisted tackle. He had 0 solo tackles, he had 0 pressures, he had 0 sacks. Khalil Mack is a 96 overall in Madden, and you're telling me that he's a 96 overall, but then you've got someone like Chandler Jones is a 94? That just doesn't add up to me, especially since Chandler Jones has been a lot more consistent throughout his career than Khalil Mack has been in the last few seasons. And you can't say that Khalil Mack doesn't have any help. He's got one of the best defensive tackles in the league, and Akeem Hicks right there with him. So they can bring pressure, but it just seems like Khalil Mack's kind of just disappeared, especially after getting that big contract. So I think it's time that we need to knock Khalil Mack down. And I'm not saying below 90 or even near 90, but maybe like a 93, 94, somewhere around there, I think is justified. All right, last on the list for the Rodgers. We're only going to do 5 this week. And number 5 might surprise a few of you. I wanted to try to do a player that I don't think is going to get a lot of love in the media, and somebody that probably a lot of people aren't going to know, and this is Justin Hollins. Now, Justin Hollins is an edge rusher for the Los Angeles Rams, and yes, he's got Aaron Donald on that team that's probably going to help him take a lot of the pressure off of him, but Justin Hollins is a 70 overall in Madden, and he had his best career day, ever, really. It was his career day. So if we look at his stats, he had 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 6 solo tackles, and he did this against Jason Peters, one of the best tackles in recent memory in the NFL. So it wasn't like he was going against any scrub. And yes, Jason Peters is getting a little older, but for a 70 overall player in Madden to go out and get 2 sacks, a forced fumble, get all those tackles, I think at a 70 overall, we need to show him a little bit more love. And I think if he continues to do this, this could be a player that we see have probably the biggest growth out of any player that we could even think of at the start of a season. I could see him being around at 80 overall by the end of the season. Mark my words, I was watching some tape. Dude's legit. All right, and last but not least on the fall list, and guys, you got to remember this fall list is nothing like, I'm not saying some of these players are bad. I'm just saying that their ratings probably need to be adjusted, and it should be dynamic from week to week because players aren't consistent throughout. The same player that you see in week 1 through 8 isn't the same that you'll see from week 9 to 17. Players are really, really good at the beginning of the seasons and bad at the end of the seasons, or vice versa. Coming in at last on the falls list is going to be Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley is a 90 overall in Madden, and the only reason why I'm going to let him slide a little bit, and he wasn't higher on this list, is because he did just come off of a major injury. And he only had 10 rushes for 26 yards. That's 2.6 yards a carry, guys. And he had 1 reception for 1 yard. And I really did think that at the beginning of this season that you were going to see a lot of his receptions kind of go down because of the pieces that they put around Daniel Jones. You got Kenny Galladay, still got Sterling Shepard, you still got Evan Ingram. I think Kyle Rudolph is on that team or not. I'm really not sure. But they have some weapons there. So I figured that with more weapons, I was probably going to decrease some of the workload for Saquon Barkley. But for him to only get 27 total yards, I think that's a little concerning. Maybe a lot of that falls on Daniel Jones. Maybe a lot of that falls on the game planning. But Saquon is a 90 overall. You would expect him to be a little bit more explosive, but maybe he's still trying to recover from that injury. Maybe they're not, or they're intentionally not giving him a big workload. But I think at a 90 overall, you expect to see a little bit more out of him, and it probably needs that just a slight little adjustment on the list. All right, guys, so that is it for week 1. We had 5 risers, we had 5 fallers. Let me know, what do you think? Should there be anybody else on the list? I had probably like 20 on each. I had to narrow it down to what I thought were the biggest 5 on each side. There were a lot of great performances. So let me know down in the comments, what do you think are some of the players that I might have missed? Argue with me. Let me know. I'm really excited to hear what you guys got to say. And make sure to hit that like button or subscribe so that you don't miss next week's countdown. And I'll catch everybody later. Peace out.